Podcast. On today's episode, I'm so excited to be joined by Sundeep Goel, the co-founder and CEO of Mavvrik. We're going to be covering 4 primary topics today, but I know the conversation always evolves based upon our discussion trends. So, number 1, the evolution of cloud cost management to AI cost governance. Number 2, some top findings from a recent AI cost governance research report that Mavvrik did in partnership with Benchmark. Is AI ROI a concept really ready for prime time to be doubled down upon? And 4th is the future of AI cost optimization. So with that, Sundeep, could you please take a moment to give a brief overview of your journey to becoming a guest here on the AI to ROI podcast?
Yeah, well, first off, Ray, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. In terms of my journey, I'm an old guy. I've been doing this a long time, 30 plus years in enterprise software. I've seen the evolution, from internet to virtual reality to social to mobile, etc. And now, obviously, very, very excited about what AI can do for us. To get specific, we started Mavvrik 4 years ago, and we started with the idea of helping companies manage their technology spend more efficiently. We saw a lot of waste, and this is all pre-AI. We were seeing a lot of waste. Fast forward 4 years, now AI is driving huge budget increases across corporate IT, and we're seeing even more waste. So we are both a little bit concerned, but also excited about the opportunity for us to add value back to the market. And we've really moved Mavvrik from a company that's focused on sort of cloud and data center to focused on AI workloads.
Yeah, well, interesting history. Though you're not as old as I am, I remember when we moved from mainframe software to distributed client server software, but we're not going to talk about that today. Hey, when we first met a couple years, I don't know if I want to win that particular competition, but when we met first a couple years ago, right, companies were really still trying to develop a more enhanced cloud cost management, and we were just a year or so into the AI revolution. So let's talk a little bit about this evolution of cloud cost management and how you've seen it evolved until today, because I would think you probably built your company and founded your company on more tech and cloud cost management.
We definitely did, right. So we started Mavvrik, it was with the idea of hybrid cloud, public cloud and private cloud side by side. And one of the interesting things is, if you and I are old enough to remember pre-cloud, costs used to be fairly static and predictable. You'd buy hardware from Dell and HP, you'd put them in a data center, you'd install software with a known cost, and the volatility wasn't like this. Cloud changed the game. Cloud was highly consumption-based and volatile, and we saw people with 20%, 30%, 50% cost overruns on cloud, and that was new for IT. IT wasn't used to that level of volatility. And so I think cloud is an interesting sort of analogy for what we're seeing with AI. AI is even more volatile. So if cloud is like this, AI is like this. But it's all because it's consumption-based, and you can't accurately predict what your future consumption will be. Does that make sense?
But let's double click into that, because as a company moved to the cloud and they used AWS or Google Cloud or Azure, I saw companies get pretty predictable costs compared to the utilization. And they knew kind of what capacity planning was, and it wasn't that volatile, and they were still driving 80% gross margins on their product. I see a big difference with AI because of both the pricing and the usage dynamics. So tell me a little bit about what are the differences that you're seeing?
There's multiple differences. First of all, I think I mentioned cloud is volatile compared to the way it was pre-cloud. AI is even more volatile, right? So the story some of your listeners may know is the Uber CTO came out earlier this year and said that Uber's blown through their token budget, their entire 2026 token budget in 3 months, right? I mean, that level of they'll probably end up at 600% of their budget. That level of volatility is just a different level of volatility than cloud. It's also true that AI is fundamentally non-deterministic. So trying to predict how many tokens a given task will take it's kind of a fool's errand. The answer is it depends. on every run might be different, so you have even more volatility. And then the other dimension is you have a proliferation of models, right? You have Kimi, you have Anthropic, you have OpenAI, each of which have different pricing models. A lot of those pricing models are being subsidized by VC dollars. So even if you predict on today's prices, what does tomorrow look like? Who knows? If VC subsidies go away, token prices might actually go up sharply. So trying to make sense of a budget and a forecast in that level of sort of volatile world is sort of very, very difficult. And fundamentally, a much more different problem than cloud represented.
Yeah. Well, and you see hundreds of companies every year, a lot using your platform. Do you see it to be a best practice to segregate cloud cost management from your AI cost management, or do you think it's the same organization, the same resources? What are you seeing out there?
I think it's the same financial discipline. So my argument would be technology in general is there to drive ROI for a business. That's why it exists. So whether that's virtual reality or whether that's cloud or whether that's AI, it all lives to serve the business from a financial return perspective. So I think that's true. So I would say the same financial discipline. It's also true that traditional cloud is typically part of AI. So when you say AI, that encompasses things like GPUs, that encompasses traditional compute on cloud. It also encompasses LLM spend that is often on cloud. So I don't think you can like piecemeal cloud and AI. They're sort of intertwined with each other.
Interesting. And well, let's talk about some data, because this is the AI to ROI. And for the second year now, we've partnered between Mavvrik and Benchmark on the AI cost governance benchmarking research and publishing a report. So I get too deep into the data, Sundeep, so I'm going to pull myself back a little bit, at least right now. What are some of the interesting findings from that research that really made you think, that's interesting?
One of the big things is when we did the research last year, Ray, forecast accuracy was poor. I think it was, people said they were like 15% of companies could forecast within plus or minus 10%, right? A very small percentage. It actually got worse. It's now 11% in 2026. So it's interesting. Aggregate AI spend jumped. I think everybody in this podcast will probably agree. 2025 people were just getting started. 2026, there's a lot of pilots going on, more in production. The spend has gone way up, but the forecast accuracy's gone down. And that's a little bit scary, just as sort of an industry veteran. I'm an AI optimist by nature. However, if people can't at all forecast the spend and it keeps going up and up and up, it's going to cause real downstream problems for finance and enterprise in general.
Well, one of the things that jumped out at me, and I'd like to get your perspective on this, was I think the question was asked, how has unexpected AI costs impacted business decisions?
Yep.
And we had two types of companies in one segmentation, those who have a digital product that uses AI, and then just regular enterprises who use AI operationally. And I think 49% of companies who have a digital product said they had to modify pricing because of unexpected AI cost trends. And on the flip side, I think 25% of companies said they had to basically stall or put on ice an AI project. So to me, that seems like significant business impact.
It's significant. So it's a really good point. So I run Mavvrik. Mavvrik is a digital products company with AI under the covers. So I have this exact problem, the first problem that you mentioned, where before most SaaS businesses have operated at 80-ish% gross margins for a long time, very healthy margins. But that's when your costs were very predictable. I knew what it cost to serve one of our large companies, and I knew what my pricing was, and I knew I could sort of maintain a healthy margin. With AI, my cost of goods sold is variable and high, and it directly impacts your pricing. And I think the real thing we're seeing is the traditional software pricing models of per seat or percentage of spend models no longer are viable, because those models assume relatively flat cost of goods sold. But in the age of AI, you can't assume that. The costs underneath it go up and down, and you need to have a pricing model that's therefore more consumption-based or more outcome-based. So we at Mavvrik are actually morphing our pricing model to be more of an outcome-based pricing model. And we have customers that are using Mavvrik to do the exact same thing. They're using us to understand their costs, to serve per product line, per customer, and using that to drive a consumption-based or outcome-based price. So yes, we're seeing it both inside of Mavvrik and in serving our customers.
Okay, so it's a well understood common problem, but then in the same report, 44% of companies said they had advanced AI cost management maturity, but only 11% can forecast within 10% accuracy. So there seems to be a real, what's the right word, mismatch there. So what are some best practices or advice you can give to CFOs or CIOs out there to try to evolve their AI cost management and governance capabilities?
Yeah, look, I'm going to be a little bit repetitive here, but I feel very strongly about this. AI is a technology tool like other technology tools. I believe it's an extremely powerful tool, but you still have to evaluate it through the lens of budget, forecast, ROI. We talk a lot of Mavvrik about budget, forecast, ROI. You can have the most exciting initiative. Everybody's very jazzed up about what it can do. If you can't understand what's the budget for that initiative, what are the forecasted costs, and most importantly, what's the ROI of that spend, I would encourage CFOs to be very careful. The idea that every AI initiative is wildly positive ROI is pretty clearly false. I think there's been a lot of high-profile examples of that in the industry. So I think you can't just assume positive ROI. You need to do the hard work to measure budget, forecast, ROI per initiative.
Yeah. You know, about 50% of our listening audience are from the Office of Finance, CFOs, VPs of accounting, et cetera. So help me here, because 98% of companies say that they're tracking AI costs, but we know that doesn't translate to predictability of how your spend. My question to you is, what are 2 or 3 of the big misses that CFOs need to be aware of that they're not accurately capturing all the components of their AI cost?
Yeah, great question. So I have a couple answers, but one is like super fundamental. I also, in the course of my job, talk to a lot of CFOs. Traditionally, what we've heard from CFOs is, my organization doesn't understand the technology well enough to challenge the spend, so I'm going to defer or delegate to my CIO or CTO. I think that is a very dangerous thing. So I would encourage CFOs or VPs of FP&A or finance folks listening to this podcast to not throw up their hands and say the technology is too complicated for me. I don't actually believe that that's true. I think it is consumable and understandable for finance folks, and I think it's critical that finance is involved. Like, we, with our customers, often start with the technology teams, but we almost always insist that finance is involved in our implementations because they have an important voice in the process. So I don't know if that makes sense, but I'd start there. The finance needs to actually be at the table.
Okay. I agree. Go ahead, because there's more than that, though, right?
There's more than that. Yeah, so that's sort of the philosophical thing. When you dig underneath the covers, I would encourage finance to not view AI cost governance as just what's my token invoice from Anthropic or OpenAI. It is a larger problem than that. If you look at AI workloads, they span public cloud, they span data centers, they definitely include LLM spend, but they also include things like GPUs. There could be some Kubernetes, both public cloud and private cloud. Databricks, Snowflake, that are part of the AI architecture. It's complicated. There's a lot of different pieces. It's very heterogeneous. Each of those technical platforms have their own billing nuances. So finance needs to sort of reconcile all of that and be able to attribute cost per application team, per agent, per customer, whatever the right unit of measure is.
Yeah, see, that's really important, because in the research, we asked about what are the most overlooked or missed components of your AI ecosystem spend, and data storage, right? The Snowflakes, right, of the world, Datadogs, et cetera. So my question to you is, the challenge with that is I was already using Snowflake, or I was already using Kubernetes, et cetera. How do you recommend they get down to the granularity of, but I want to know what my AI impact is for that IT cost, but then over time, I want to know it down to a application level, a user level, an agent level? That seems very hard.
It is hard. I mean, I'm not going to pretend like this is an easy thing, right? This is hard. Most of our companies sort of say, like you mentioned, 98% sort of feel like they're tracking their AI costs. I suspect what that means is 98% of companies understand here's what my Anthropic bill was, per month last year. Here's what my OpenAI bill was. Here's what my Cursor bill was at an aggregate level, right? And that's true. That's still useful, but that's usually not the right unit of measure. You want to take that aggregate spend and attribute that to project teams or product teams or customers or per product per customer. There's usually a much more granular sort of grouping that you want to have, and to reconcile all of those costs at an individual grouping level is hard. I mean, that's what tools like Mavvrik do, and there's other tools as well. But I do think it's a complicated problem, and that's where finance can get involved, because typically the technology teams are tracking it at an aggregate level. Finance needs to take that aggregate spend and map it to the right allocations and the right unit of measure.
Yeah. So, once again, you talk to so many companies, and I hate to put you in a spot like this, but what percentage of the companies you speak to actually have the ability to manage costs at that level of granularity? Is it 50%? Is it 5%? What do you see?
It's more like 5%, and even that might be generous. We got to remember it's early days, and I'm not here to beat up on AI folks. Like, it is early days. Most of the companies we talk to are still at the pilot phase. They may be running a dozen AI pilots. A few have a big in production, but most of them are still piloting. So it's early days. People have time to get this right, but I would encourage people to not wait. I think the next 6 to 12 months are critical, because if you don't build the muscle memory in the organization to track AI costs, at the project level, at the customer level, then it'll be very difficult to retrofit it after the fact. Yeah. But to answer your question directly, very, very few customers are able to allocate AI costs at that level today.
And what kind of momentum do you see behind a dedicated group like financial operations or AI operations who are owning that responsibility? Is that really taking hold?
So FinOps, FinOps as a discipline, I think, has been around now for 10 to 12 years. Those are folks that we've traditionally worked really closely with. They largely have their arms around cloud. I don't want to say it's totally solved, but I think most FinOps teams sort of have a budget, forecast, ROI. They kind of have an understanding of that from a cloud perspective. Now we're going into AI. I would argue the FinOps team often has a strong finance component to it. That team is often best positioned to take on AI. What we've observed is there can be some cultural friction within organizations where you might have an AI innovation team or an AI center of excellence that's driving sort of new projects and don't want to slow down to count pennies. And the FinOps team is saying, hey, it's not pennies, it's actually millions of dollars or potentially millions of dollars. So I think companies are dealing with, it's more of a cultural issue than it is a technology issue. My guess is it ends with the FinOps team and the finance team owning the budget line item for AI. And I think that's healthy for everybody.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I waited almost 20 minutes to pivot to this, but you mentioned ROI. We are the AI to ROI podcast. But you also mentioned that we're still in the early stages just of great AI cost governance. So are we at a point where we can actually start consistently measuring the ROI side?
Yes.
Are we there yet, Sundeep?
I believe so. We talk a lot at Mavvrik. ROI is value minus cost divided by cost, right? It's sort of very basic. Economics 101. Cost is something that is solvable today. I mean, Mavvrik, this is our business, and again, there are other companies that do this too. But you should be able to do very, very granular collection of all of the relevant data and then allocation of that data at the right unit of measure. I think that is solved for. Value, is trickier. I think value is trickier than cost in that it's not just mathematical. Value is very subjective. Is the value we reduced employee costs? Is the value AI has now made something possible that was no longer possible? And what is that value? Is it time savings? Is it customer satisfaction? Value can be a bit more subjective, but there are ways to solve for value. And if you can get value, cost is well solved for. ROI is value minus cost divided by cost. So I think the best companies we're working with today have a single view of all of their AI niche projects, and they have here's what the ROI is today, and here's what the projected ROI will be.
So do you have any advice as companies, are deploying the latest AI agent, or they've got 4 different agent deployments going on, to make sure you have the infrastructure in place that, number one, measures the cost for everything, but also can marry the economic value. Do you have any advice or framework for that?
Yeah, I mean, companies like Mavvrik exist to solve this problem. So for companies that sort of like using third-party software, I would encourage them to look, obviously we're happy to talk to any of your customers, or again, there are other competitors. Companies don't necessarily, they can try to do it on their own. The key principles, though, are make sure you collect all of the costs. It's not just your LLM costs. Collect all of your costs, normalize them in a data lake, data platform, call it what you will, and then make sure you have very granular allocation rules. You can allocate the right cost to the right initiative. And then know that this is dynamic. Know that when you're running a pilot with 10 restaurants, but now I'm going to roll it out to 10,000 restaurants, the economics change, right? So you need to, this isn't a one-time Excel exercise. You need to set this up so it's kind of dynamically always updating itself and constantly measuring total cost, unit economics, and ROI.
In fact, that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about, because AI is still evolving so quickly, right? Like, who was really talking about open weight models 12 months ago when they were only like less than 30% of traffic, and per open router, they're now like 70% of total token traffic that they measure are open weight. So my question is, number one, how do you plan to ensure that you can keep pace with the cost variables as fast as AI is growing? Because to me, that seems hard.
It is hard. It is hard. I mean, even if you ignore open weight for a moment, you look at the vast majority of sort of closed models or OpenAI and Anthropic today, their pricing, I mean, I was in a room a few months ago in Atlanta with a bunch of IT professionals, and I made the statement, I believe token costs are going to go up. And you should, Ray, it was funny in the room. It was like a civil war in the room. Half the room violently agreed with me, half the room violently disagreed with me. And I think a lot of it comes down to what's going to happen to token pricing in general. The open weight models are one variable, but the other variable is as VC subsidy dollars go away and the LLM models have pressure to be profitable, they're going to have to raise pricing. Right? So all of this is highly volatile. Again, I think you need a dedicated team and a dedicated technology that's tracking all of these costs, inclusive of token and LLM costs. Expecting people to manually keep up with it in Excel is, in my mind, a fool's errand.
Yeah. Well, also, you talked the other day when we were getting ready for today's episode that we're talking a lot about cost governance, but you said, hey, Ray, the future isn't cost governance. That's going to get solved. We're already on a path to that. It's really cost optimization. Yep. And cost optimization says there's going to be a lot of architectural, model, dynamic traffic routing decisions. So do you see AI cost management and governance software getting into the cost optimization capabilities?
We are. I don't want to speak for everybody, but we at Mavvrik believe AI cost optimization is a expected extension of AI cost governance, and our customers expect us to do it. A data point that your listeners, I think, are going to have heard before, but it's worth remembering. Cloud spend. Cloud's the precursor for AI, right? So cloud spend, Accenture, McKinsey, ISG, a bunch of companies have measured waste in cloud over the years, and the number was anywhere from 31 to 35%. So if you think about that number, cloud spend is cresting over $1 trillion a year now. 30+% of that, $300 billion, is waste, literally adding no value back to the world. Now, take that reality and apply it to AI, where AI, if cloud was $1 trillion, AI is probably $2 trillion. Okay, there's going to be a significant, I would say analogous 30-ish% waste there that enterprise IT needs to kill. They need to find and kill that waste. They're going to expect AI cost governance tools like Mavvrik to help them do that. So we believe optimization is key, and we believe that ultimately that's how people are going to justify the ROI of platforms like Mavvrik.
And because one of the things I always like to think about the vision for a software company, the optimization component, I see how Mavvrik could be a critical component to that. But to me, orchestration of the traffic to the right models for the right job, that seems like a natural integrated capability. Do you see that happening with your platform in the future?
There's a bunch, yes, but there's other things possible too, right? So for sure, dynamic model selection is an area. context optimization, like what are the prompts? Are we caching the results from the right prompts so we're not prompting for the same thing over and over? A big area we're seeing are what we're calling PTU optimization or rate optimization, where as you make commitments to the hyperscalers around AI consumption, you can get better rates. And that can drive, 50-ish% decreases in your rate. There's a lot of opportunity. Like our early customers, we are seeing are saving already saving up to 15% of their AI costs by sort of using Mavvrik in 3 or 4 different ways to reduce their costs and optimize their costs.
Yeah, Sundeep, I saw the same thing in cloud cost management, where we did a better job of negotiating with our cloud service providers, et cetera, and that drove a lot of savings. But that almost artificially delayed the IT or the development group looking at architectural components that were driving a lot of the inefficiency. So I'm kind of concerned about the same thing with AI. I might get a better deal from Anthropic, but really I could optimize my AI architecture to get better visibility, to better cost,
I agree. We still see, by the way, cloud is not like done. Like we still see a lot of waste in cloud. I do want to say that, but it's gotten a lot better. On the architectural side, I mentioned earlier in this talk that we see some cultural friction between the AI innovators and finance within an organization. The innovators want to go, 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 go. They don't want to stop and slow down architecture for purely cost reasons. They're willing to do it for other reasons, but the assumption is the ROI is so positive that I don't want to worry about cost. And I don't think that's true. So I do think that at some point, like you mentioned, 1 in 4 AI projects have been stopped recently. As that becomes more, I think that's going to continue, by the way. If anything, it might grow. In 1 in 4 might become 1 in 3, 1 in 2. People are going to be forced to say, and the AI teams are going to be forced to say, wait a minute, we actually do have to stop and architect these systems correctly for cost, or I'm not going to get my budget approved. And I think there needs to be a little bit of that, but right now we see a lot of internal cultural friction.
Well, it's interesting. I recently interviewed the CFO of ClickUp, which is about a $300 million technology company, and Dan Zhang, the CFO, is actually also the chief AI officer. And her perspective, now that's unique, but she goes, who better to understand not only how AI is being employed, but how it impacts the economics of our business, both on a revenue and an expense side. So I thought that was a very interesting model, and I want to see more and more companies have the CFO have a partner's seat at the AI table.
I love that. Whether the CFO should always be the chief AI officer, I don't know, but finance having a seat at the table, to me, that's absolutely non-negotiable. Finance needs to have a seat at the table. I bet ClickUp will do really well with the ROI and their AI initiatives with the CFO in charge.
Yeah. Well, we've hit our 30-minute mark, so I'd like to give the audience a chance to get to know you a little bit better with 3 rapid-fire questions. Okay, Sundeep?
Sure.
So, number 1, who owns measuring the actual benefits received from AI investments? Is there a person you think owns it?
I think it is the business line executive that the AI agent is serving. So if I'm at an insurance company and we have a claims processing agent, whoever's responsible for claims processing should own the value of that agent. It shouldn't be the team that built the agent.
I love that. The business owner becomes the economic owner also.
That's right.
I love it. Okay. Which variables, you've already mentioned this, but it's a quick summary, rapid fire question. What are the key variables that are key to ensuring that you drive ROI from your AI investments?
You need to have a total cost picture inclusive of public cloud, private cloud, GPU, LLM, and data platforms. And then you need to be able to allocate those costs to the right unit of measure. The unit of measure might be per customer, per application team, per feature. Every business is different, but make sure you understand that. And it might also not even be, it might be per outcome. In the claims processing example, it might be, what is my cost to to process a claim? Make sure you're attributing and allocating costs at that level.
Okay. And then one last question for our early career audience. For that recent college graduate who's having a hard time finding a job because AI is impacting it, what advice do you give to him and her right now as they're starting their first job?
This is a very good question and near and dear to my heart. It's a tough answer, but I think people need to be a little bit patient. Right now, there's this mentality that AI is magic; it'll solve all problems at a wildly positive ROI. I've already said I don't believe that's true. I think the market needs to reconcile to that reality, and then people are going to then realize I need people to fill in a lot of these roles. The other thing companies need is they need senior leaders, even with AI. Well, how do you get senior leaders if you don't hire junior leaders and groom them? So I believe this is all going to work out over time. Short term, if people magically think AI is going to solve their problems, okay, they need to be proved wrong. And then the market will come back to people and employees and the way we've always done things.
Sundeep Goel, co-founder, CEO of Mavvrik, thank you so much for being my guest here on the AI to ROI podcast.
Thank you, Ray. Appreciate the time.
And for the people who want to follow you, maybe get in contact with you, learn more about Mavvrik, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm always connected with people on LinkedIn. Happy to talk. Sundeep Goel on LinkedIn. And then Mavvrik is mavvrik.ai. Happy, a lot of information on our technology and use cases are available. And if we can help any of your listeners, of course, we'd love to do that.
Okay, and to our listening audience, if you're finding real value from the insights that our guests are providing, it would mean the world to us to go ahead and subscribe to the AI to ROI podcast on your favorite podcasting app. Go ahead and give us that 5-star rating. And hey, reach out to me at Ray Reich on LinkedIn and let me know if there's any other guests that you think would benefit our audience. Thank you to our audience, and thank you again, Sundeep.
Thank you, Ray.